Hey, it's Matt O'Leary, and this is New Music Monthly, where I cover a number of new releases from the past month, some of my favorites that I want to shout out in the worlds of alternative rock, indie, prog, the usual. And today I've got 6 new albums for you, all of which seem criminally under the radar, which is pretty rare that everything I'm covering is pretty much unspoken about. But before we jump into that, I just want to say thank you to some new subscribers. I've recently had a kind of an infusion that has me feeling positive about where the channel's going. And I hope to back that up with just more and more content that really does what I want out of this content, which is finding new stuff, expanding my horizons, spreading my wings like an eagle, or whatever. And leading off today is a Canadian singer-songwriter who plays a very eclectic brand of folky, quirky chamber pop. And that is Philippe Braque with Les gens croient en mai, I think. Philippe Braque's career was jump-started by winning the grand prize. He won $10,000 at this music festival in Quebec for up-and-coming artists. And this album begins with this slow, cinematic opening that could be the theme of a David Lynch film, and quickly follows with The Last Call, which has a very Wilco-like folk simplicity about it before this island psychedelia comes in and everything turns into a breezy, fun jam. And the record just continues to ping-pong back and forth between this big, cinematic, orchestral beauty and this kind of folky, psychedelic at times rock. My favorite moment on the album is this very tongue-in-cheek 1-2 punch of Revolution La Chanson and OK Canada. The former is almost a show tune that appears to be kind of an esoteric song about the revolution. It's very upbeat, it's very catchy, but the song ends with the music fading out and then you hear this person being waterboarded. So there's that. But actually, it's a pretty well done, pretty clever moment because the song is obviously a, fake. Then OK Canada is just what it sounds like. It's this weird bedroom pop, cheap synth version of O Canada, which pretty weird idea, but I dig it. And the album ends on this gorgeous little acoustic guitar bed and synth ditty. I love this album. It's very well written, very well orchestrated. It's eclectic and vibrant and fun, but makes absolutely no sense. In the coveted number 2 spot on this completely randomized, completely arbitrary list is an alternative rock and prog band from Manchester. After lineup changes dating back to the MySpace era, this band is now just 2 dudes, Sel Balamir and Matt Brobin. And it's kind of like Steven Wilson and Riverside mixed with the crunch and the sprawling song structures of Motorpsycho. The vocals are definitely easy on the ears, very easy to wrap your head around, but some of the textured atmospherics and these very long, drawn-out progressions just take some time to understand. The first 2 tracks get things off to a stormin' start with this heavier rock sound, almost Soundgarden-like distorted tones. Then the 3rd track, Hologram, delves into deeper, murkier, less immediate territory. And my favorite track, Tundra, is really the perfect example of this long, drawn-out progression and riff kind of style that I'm talking about. It has repetition, but it's maybe like every 8 to 10 bars instead of every 2 or 3 like a normal rock song. It's definitely an album I'm still working on, but the mix of the complexity and the accessibility has me coming back. If you listen to a lot of prog, you'll hear some familiar things, but I think the songs are pretty uniquely written and structured. The next album is considerably more delicate. And this artist from Sweden was really a mainstay of the indie folk movement from the late aughts and into the 2010s. His first 2 albums, Shallow Grave and The Wild Hunt, some of my favorites from that era, if you can call it that, along with this sweet little EP called Sometimes the Blues is Just a Passing Bird. The tallest man on earth is Swedish singer-songwriter Christian Mattsson, who's kind of a modern, more melodic version of Bob Dylan. And he's one of the best modern folk performers, like just on a performance level. Amazing voice, amazing playing, always just really spot on and emotional. And Henry Street breaks a spell of stinker records, to be honest. I think, the first track here, Bless You, just brings a brightness and an optimism that I haven't heard in his music since 2012, like the third album. While Looking for Love and Every Little Heart and Major League bring the signature breakneck finger-picking patterns with some really tasteful playing from his new band. Slowly River's Turn is the epitome of carefree, but still brings Mattson's also very signature vocal outbursts. That hook really hits hard. Then you get this great sax solo that doesn't really linger around very long, but just brings a dynamic to the sound, brings something that on past records could get a little samey with just the acoustic guitar and the voice. This isn't like a mind-blowing album, but it really surprised me after about 10 years of not being interested in this guy's music. And it's just a great, lazy, kind of weekend morning album. It's warm, it's tasteful, it's tuneful, yet there's still some plaintive undertones in his unique, gritty voice and just awesome acoustic guitar work. Next up is another album you could probably classify as folk, but much more in the bedroom indie rock sort of vein, as opposed to the more organic instrumentation in The Tallest Man on Earth. I knew this band, I like their sound, but I never loved any of the albums, so this was another pleasant surprise that I've just been playing a ton. And I wish you were here right now. A River Running to Your Heart by Fruit Bats. Now, Fruit Bats is the project of Eric Johnson, who was a lifelong Deadhead, but then found his kind of muse, found his life in the 90s with the indie rock scene, which he felt like just gave a voice to some artists with some really great musical ideas who couldn't shred. Fun fact, Eric had a little stint with the Shins in their Port of Morrow period, which is a great album. But anyway, River Running to Your Heart is a very tight, very short folk rock album that I don't think is super deep or super profound, but really makes for a good short commute or road trip album. There's Tacoma, the love letter to apparently his favorite city in Washington, which makes that city sound like a tropical getaway with a buoyant bass line and very sticky falsetto hook. But two songs in particular just have me all wrapped up in their spell. It's See the World by Night and It All Comes Back. See the World by Night is a disco-tinged poppy number with a really great chord progression that shifts from fun and fancy-free to dreamy and reflective, while It All Comes Back is almost a Mac DeMarco-esque slower track with what sounds like a harmonica but must be some sort of synth. Again, just love the chords, love the melody of that song. Every moment is perfect, and there really are some just euphoric chord changes in there. And speaking of chord changes, I guess, I got to shout out the new one from the Mexican acoustic guitar duo. This is my favorite album of theirs since probably 2014's Nine Dead Alive. Rodrigo and Gabriela have been around for a couple decades now and play this flamenco-infused instrumental rock. It's usually pretty heavy on the acoustic guitars, but this one has more electric, more soundscape elements, more strings. There's a real vigor, a real driving intensity to these songs, which is pretty normal for the group. They like to play fast. But there's a lot of dynamic range, a lot of soft and sweet moments as well. The eye that catches the dream is this whole spectrum of dynamics just encapsulated in one track. Melody is obviously number one for the band on this album, but they use an expanded instrumental palette and their dynamics to just put a polish on those melodies. They're jammy and foot-stomping songs. Descending to Nowhere and Ego Land are some other highlights. You can really tell they're influenced by metal with some of the riffs they gravitate towards. There's a real palpable love for what they're doing and for each other, and a love for music that just oozes through their albums. And Just that energy is infectious. All right, we got one album left here, and it's a band that I kind of like their sound more than I like their songs, if that makes sense. It's kind of this mix of jazz and modern classical and electronic. Yes, it's another band from Manchester and another album from GoGo Penguin called Everything Is Going to Be Okay. And like I said, this is a jazz trio, so you got drums, you got stand-up bass, you got piano, mixed with all sorts of touches of electronic sounds and textures and modern classical pieces. So a little like the Bad Plus, but probably a little more modern, maybe Bad Bad Not Good, but I'd say less influenced by bebop. Although like Bad Bad Not Good, there is a little trip hop and kind of DJ Shadow influence sound on some tracks. This is their 6th year in a row with a release, which is pretty sweet. And their second one on XXIM Records. That breaks a spell of, 4 or 5 years on Blue Note, which yielded my favorite album by the band, A Humdrum Star, in 2018. I missed just the speed and just the visceral intensity of that album on their more recent albums. So in that way alone, Everything Is Going to Be Okay is a continuation of that slide downward. But as the title suggests, there's just this cool, relaxed ease to this whole album. Some tracks are a little too sleepy and ambient and aimless for me, like Last Breath or An Unbroken Thread of Awareness, which I should have known by that title. But considering the title and the whole background of this album, it's coming out of a period where I think they lost a couple family members, one to cancer. So, I truly understand the reflective nature of the album. And there are enough highlights here, and I love their sound so much that I'm willing to just give it 50 to 100 listens to grow on me. Because their music is difficult compositionally. Just listen to the layers and the timing of everything on the song Parasite. But it's also very accessible sonically. Like, I think if you don't think you like jazz, if you don't think you like electronica, you still might like this. The textures are smooth and agreeable and very much like pop music in that way. But unlike pop music, no one is really playing the hero. It's very much about serving the song, to use a little bit of a music critic cliche. And that's it. That's all the albums from the month of April that I loved. There have been a couple more coming out in recent weeks that I can't wait to talk about as well. But I just wanted to make sure I hit on those and didn't pass them by. And I didn't want you to pass them by either. Go ahead and check out my past month's reviews and New Music Monthly episodes. And as always, thank you so much for watching.